So unofficially, though.
So unofficially, we think he's going to go number 2 in the state for archery. If not 2, definitely number 3. It's going to come down to a couple 8s, really, which, score is cool. I'm super grateful I shot such a big ram. I would have been just as happy to shoot the 5.5 ram that I was chasing. It just happened to be that when I finally got my shot opportunity, it was a big one standing there, right? But I haven't had him officially scored yet, but we'll get that done. And, if it is, we might put a nice little plaque underneath of him. So the wife gave me the okay to do a full body mount, which, it'll be pretty neat to have. And, I look at it, at my age, like I'm still pretty young. That's going to be a lot of years of looking at that mount and reliving those memories and those experiences.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the other reason, like, I don't really know anything about score, but I ask because it gives you kind of a reference point, right? For people out there wondering. I mean, it's number 2 in the state, number 2, 3 in the state for archery. Like, that's a big ram.
Right.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here at RedBeard Outdoors, I talk about faith, family, fitness, and the outdoors. Today, I have an amazing guest for you guys. On Saturdays, we do those full-length episodes, hour to an hour and a half, where we bring a guest on, we talk to you, or talk to each other, and share that conversation with you, hopefully answering some questions. You learn something from the conversation, or you just enjoy it as if you were there present with us. That's what I want to portray. It could be anyone from experts in their field to people that I just really enjoy their stories and want to share with you, and everything in between. So enjoy this conversation. Today, we've got a special guest, Jeremiah Plier. He is the owner of Wilde Arrow. Guys, if it wasn't for Wilde Arrow, I honestly wouldn't really be into bow hunting. There was a couple key factors, key people. My best friend Brent and Wilde Arrow are the main 2 reasons why I am into bow hunting, why I love archery as much as I do, why I've learned as much as I have in the short amount of time that I have, and why I continue to be able to learn, because they are a wealth of knowledge at this bow shop, and they continue to teach me the ropes. So super stoked to share this conversation with you. We're going to go over Jeremiah's sheep hunt. We're going to go over quite a few things, how he got into archery, why he owns a bow shop, and how much he loves helping other people with their bows. Now, with that being said, on Tuesdays, guys, we do gear reviews, Tinkering Tuesdays, so mindset, gear reviews based on whatever we need, and things that I want to bring to you, whether it be a review, first impressions, etc., of things that I've used or I'm going to use, and get back to you on the follow-up. And then every other Thursday, we do a why, First Phorm, and First Phorm Outdoors episode, where we bring people on that you get to hear their opinion as to why they've chosen First Phorm as their community of choice to launch their health goals, whether that be wanting to go run marathons, step on stage for bodybuilding, just get in shape for the hunt, be able to be a better version of yourself, why you should be a part of First Phorm. So with that being said, guys, let's get into this conversation with Jeremiah. Actually, hold on one second. Before we get into that conversation with Jeremiah, if you're listening to this in May, don't forget, I've got 3 huge giveaways / sweepstakes going on right now, guys. So first and foremost, we've got First Phorm. We are giving away a hunt of a lifetime up in Montana with antelope, pronghorn, whatever you want to call them, guys. You can win a new rifle. You can win a new scope. There's so many things that go into over $9,000 package. Go check it out. The link will be down below. No purchase necessary to get into that hunt of a lifetime sweepstakes with First Phorm. Definitely check it out. Second and third, guys, we've got the Garmin giveaway, where I'm giving away either an Instinct or a Garmin Messenger, something that you can benefit from, something that I've loved having in the backcountry. Check out that video down below and how to get entered. And last but not least, we're doing an over $500 giveaway from BlackOvis over on Instagram. I will leave that link down below as well. If you don't have an Instagram, I 100% understand. I will also leave that link on how to get entered, even if you don't have an Instagram. So with that being said, guys, let's get into this conversation with Jeremiah Plier from Wilde Arrow Archery.
We'll just roll with it. All right. Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I've got Jeremiah Plier here. He is the owner of Wilde Arrow. And honestly, you guys have heard me talk about it. Between him and Mark, I wouldn't be into archery or where I am without these two guys. But we're here because we want to talk to Jeremiah about this the reason why this hat was made to begin with. and basically kind of your story on how you got into archery. And then, of course, it's kind of culminated this last year in this big old hunt that you did. And we're not going to spoil anything. I'll make sure this podcast comes out after the video because you've got an awesome film that was done by Brad Hunt, and on the sheep hunt. So with that being said, Jeremiah, who are you for people that don't know who you are?
Yeah, Jeremiah Plyer. And I was born and raised here in Utah. I'm a Utah boy and love the mountains here. And you know, archery just, I don't know why, it was one of my passions as a kid, something that I was interested in. 20 years later, I am working at a bow shop. So I've had a pretty good career doing it, man. I've been pretty fortunate to be where I'm at in life. So
yeah, and Jeremiah will tell you, if you want to shoot your bow, don't own a bow shop. How many bows have you parted out and like given pieces?
Every one of them. Yeah. I don't think there's one bow I have right now that has everything I originally started with. They're all parts and pieces.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it gets set up, and then it just, you know, if someone wants that piece, you don't have it up on the wall. That's kind of
yeah. It's like, here, take mine, and I'll wait for the next one to come in. And so, but I don't have much time to shoot anymore anyway, so that's all right. Yeah. If I need a bow really bad, I've got plenty of them back there to choose from.
Right, so. Right. So, kind of walk us through, how did you get started in archery? Why did that even become a thing for you?
Yeah, so, you know, growing up here in Utah, I enjoyed some rifle hunts with my family and really enjoyed those, and had some great opportunities when I was a kid. I shot a nice bull and a couple nice bucks, but there was just something about archery that was so intriguing to me. And so, you know, one year I think I was a sophomore in high school, and had worked the summer job and saved up, you know, $600 or $700. And I'm like, I'm going bow hunting, man. And I went into an archery shop back then, and man, kind of the rest is history, I guess. After that, it's like, you know, I did have some struggles in the beginning though. And I talk about those all the time with customers here, but there's just something about archery that just intrigued me. And I don't know. I got hooked. I got hooked early, I guess. So.
What was your first bow?
It was a Hoyt MT Sport, actually. Okay. So it was an old Magarizer bow. I still remember it to this day. Back then, Hoyt used to have a single cam, but they had a thing on top called a dual idler. So the string would come up one side and hook, and then the control cable would actually hook on the other side of the idler wheel and come down. And man, I have a lot of good fond memories with that bow. A lot of misses, but good memories. So yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds complicated. I don't know a ton about archery, but that cam system seems a little.
Yeah. Like... So I mean, back in the day when single cams first started to come out, you know, Matthews started the trend in that, and then a lot of companies kind of followed suit for a while. But Hoyt, you know, with their engineering team, they came up with a really cool concept. So instead of having back then with a lot of single cam bows, your strings were getting really long, like 80 plus inches, 90 plus inches on some bows. So the problem when you have a string that's that long, a little bit of stretch magnifies problems. And peep rotation back then, back then everyone ran rubber tubing on their peep sights, right? Because they could never keep a peep sight
to get it
straight.
to pull back straight.
Yeah, and so with Hoyt's system, what was pretty neat is with that dual track idler, between separating the string and the control cable, now you have two separate pieces. It's easier to keep your peep rotation back. And, you know, even back then, though, the strings and cable quality wasn't nearly as good. I remember I had a lot of hunting bows back in the day with that rubber tubing on there. And that's just what you had to live with back then. That's what it was. So, yeah.
And for people that don't know what he's talking about, it's and they're still on a lot of bows now, especially like kids' bows or the not flagship bows, where it pulls the peep straight for you as you pull back. It's that string that attaches, you know, from the cable to the peep. And then the magnesium riser. So now you're shooting, you know, aluminum riser or carbon riser, and it's definitely a different material. You know, aluminum's a little bit more sturdy.
Yeah, aluminum's a little bit stronger, and nowadays with their build processes, the tolerances on them are getting. It's amazing on how good these manufacturers get building bows.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and like Matthews making what's their 29.5-inch bow now? It's like
they have the new lift out.
Yeah, but it's a what, 4-pound bow or something?
4 pounds.
Rather with the carbons, almost.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of guys come in and pick that bow up with some of the other carbons. They go, man, the Matthews is almost lighter.
Yeah.
So no, Matthews did a great job on that bow this year. For guys that are looking to shave some weight and kind of keep the price, you know, they're budget friendly. It's been a pretty popular bow for us this year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you got into archery. You had some hiccups.
Yeah.
And were the hiccups missed animals, or what were the hiccups?
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that I'll remember as a kid going into my first I call them an archery shop, right?
Mm.
And I'll break that down just a little bit for you. I've said this for years. There's a big difference from an archery shop to an archery pro shop. And a lot of consumers in the beginning, it's hard to separate those, right? They seem the same. So I went into an archery shop, worked my butt off all summer. I go in, I'm like, hey, I've got $700. To me, back then, that was a lot of money. It still is for a lot of new bow hunters. And,
Well, back then you could buy a flagship for like $400.
Yeah. You're probably not wrong. But, I bought it. It had the full package. It had like the metal 2-prong rest. A lot of guys don't remember that. But back then, a lot of those bows had a metal rest on a spring. It was just 2 prongs. Your arrow had to sit in. And so it had that style rest, a 3-pin sight, the old Hoyt quiver with it. I don't even know if I had a stable. I don't remember my stabilizer, but it was kind of like a package set up, ready to go that fit my budget. And that's what I was after just to get started. But, I'll never forget, I was so excited. And, the shop probably told me 2 weeks to get my bow. And I'm sure I called them every day, so I get it. When customers call me every day, I'm like, I get it. You're excited. Yeah. It's not done. But, I go down and pick up that bow, and, when I grab it and I ask the guy, I'm like, what do I do with it? He's like, well, go shoot it. I'm like, no, that sounds easy enough. Like, yeah, that's awesome. So, man, I struggled that first summer, man. My form was terrible, technique. I was actually smacking my arm every single shot. My arm was black and blue because I wanted to do it so bad. But so I ended up, bending my arm too far. And I've told this story a bunch in the shop, but, I was at the range one day and I was getting pretty frustrated, and my groups at 40 were not pretty, man. Like, if I could keep 3 arrows on a pie plate, I was feeling pretty good about myself. And, I don't think it was my first year, it was my second year into it. And I was about ready to kind of quit at that point. I'm like, man, the groups are terrible, I'm missing animals. My arm's black and blue. My arm guard, I had to keep buying arm guards because I kept wearing the ding things out. And luckily I was at the range one day, and this old timer's watching me shoot, and he looks at me, he's like, come here, dummy, let me show you what you're doing wrong. And boy, he helped me out quite a bit. And a story that since we kind of brought it up, something I kind of want to tell. Back in the day, there was a shop up in Brigham City, Utah. It was Roy and Cat Archery. They had it out their basement. And my uncle at the time was going up there and had Roy working on his bows. And Roy was a big fan of alpine bows back then. He thought they were the neat thing, and they were a good bow brand back in the day. And I go down to Roy's basement, and because I couldn't figure it out. I'm struggling, and Roy looks at me and sees everything I'm doing wrong. He's like, hey, fix this and fix that. And so the first shot I pulled back did exactly how he told me. Did it perfect. He's like, okay, good job. Do it again. And I'll never forget this. I went to pull my bow back a second time, and I went back to my old form, my old habits, and Roy took an arrow and smacked me on the back of the leg. And I'll tell you what, I've threatened to do that to customers now, but I've always said for years, Roy spending that time with me, didn't charge me anything when I was a kid, is one of the big reasons I stuck with the sport of archery. And I'm going to tell your listeners just a little bit of backstory on that. Utah has the Utah Bowmen's Association. They changed names a couple times, but great group of guys, good organization. Well, years ago, they actually presented Roy and Kat with an award, got him up on stage. And as Roy came down off stage, I pulled him aside and I says, you don't know me, but I says, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this sport today. And so it was a pretty cool moment to look back at my my career and where I'm at, what I'm doing, and so much of it is because of that guy right there. So kind of a cool story about my history of where I came from as an archer and a bow hunter. So
yeah, and it's cool to people like yourself and people that stick around for a while. They seem to have those stories where there's someone that either helped them out, like treated them like a son, grandson, or just stuck with them. Answered their questions, didn't get frustrated with them. And that's definitely a big thing between archery shops and pro shops. Like, nothing against like Shields, but you go in there, they set your stuff up, and it's a different customer base too.
For sure.
You want your stuff set up real quick and you're out the door, right? And there's good bow techs there, but you come here, it's more of a family vibe. You walk in and you've got that, relationship with people, and almost to a detriment, where people come in and want to hang out with you all the time,
sure.
right?
I love the culture we've created here, though. The atmosphere, that's a big part of Wilde Arrow. And so, No, there's some days we're busy and I feel bad because I can't stop and have that
Mhm.
conversation with guys. And I understand it's cool, but the days that we're slow and guys just want to come in and talk bow hunting, like I love the fact we've created that culture here.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, you were shooting, you got better, you killed a couple animals, I imagine.
No, I haven't even killed one
Oh,
yet.
no.
I haven't even killed one yet.
All right.
So, my first couple seasons, man, my very first backpack hunt, I went on with my uncle. I couldn't afford any. I remember stealing change out of my grandpa's couch to buy my first pack of broadheads back then. Not kidding you.
Mhm.
Back then, everyone had change in their pockets, right?
Mhm.
So grandpa's couch was always good for some change, and went and bought a pack of Muzzy broadheads, and man, I tell guys all the time, when I was young and dumb, I was hiking into places I had no business being into, and man, the very first big game animal I ever shot at was a big buck, and we were about 5 miles in, had a basin to myself, and man, I didn't even own a rangefinder back then, and I go creeping in after this buck, and next thing I know, bucks start popping out everywhere. I'm like, this is awesome. And I look down the hill, and there's about 3 bucks. There's probably about a 24-inch buck, a 26-inch buck, and then a 28-inch buck. And the 20-inch buck's nice, like deep forks, velvet. And I'll never forget drawing back on him. And it's a steep downhill shot. And again, I don't know about angles or anything yet.
Bubbles and
nothing, right? So I angled down and I put my 20-yard pin on this deer, and I look, and there's some brush between me and the buck. And I go, man, my arrow's probably going to hit that brush. So guess what I do? I raise up, I put my 30-yard pin right on him and send it. And I won't never forget watching my arrow go over that deer's back. And I sat on the mountain going, that was one of the funnest, coolest things, but I'm so pissed off I didn't kill that deer. It was like, you want to talk about emotional roller coaster. And so, yeah, it was the very first big game animal I missed. I ended up missing a cow elk one day. These memories that we create as bow hunters are just burned into my brain. Like, I can't remember a lot of things from that long ago in life, but I can remember the animals that got away pretty quick. But it took me a couple of years to really, really connect the dots. And I've told this story again to, guys that are listening here, customers, but the very first big game animal I ended up harvesting was a cow elk. And I'll tell you, you would have thought that was a 400-inch bull for how excited I was for all the failures and all the things that I knew that I overcome as a bow hunter to finally get my first cow. And it was a great feeling. And I knew right then and there I was hooked. I was like, I don't want to do anything but bow hunt ever again. And so, yeah, it took me a lot of years though, probably my 3rd season before I actually connected on a big game animal with a bow. But
oh man,
feeling I'll never forget.
Yeah, and that's you get hooked, and there's some people that maybe don't necessarily get hooked, and that's cool. But you always remember that first time you connect with an animal for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So 3 seasons in, and then how old are you at this point?
So I think I 3 seasons in. I think I was I just graduated high school. So I kind of hunted through the high school, which one of the reasons I got into bow hunting back then was, my dad would take me out on the rifle hunt. The problem with the rifle hunting season, it would come and go so quickly. It just didn't last. And so the bow hunt back then, I could get quite a bit of time to go hunting before school started.
Right.
And so that was really appealing to me. But so, yeah, I think I just graduated. I killed a cow elk. Great experience. And then right after that, as I grew up north, like Ogden, Layton area here in Utah, well, I decided to move down to Phorm, Provo area. And this is where a lot of poor life decisions happen here, right? I always joke around about how I ended up here, but I had walked into Jake's Archery at the time. They had a pro shop down there in Phorm, and Jake's was a staple for the archery community down there for a long, long time. I walked in one day to buy a part for a site, and they had a help wanted sign on the door. And I'm like, I just moved here. I need a job. And I asked them, like, hey, at the time I thought I knew I had archery experience. So I'm like, hey, I've got archery experience. I need a job. They're like, when can you start? I'm like, tomorrow. And so, yeah, I started at Jake's, and I learned very quickly that I thought I knew about archery, Not even a close.
Yeah.
It barely
Yeah.
scratched the surface, you know.
No, that's awesome. And so Jake's Archery was your first kind of introduction to working in a bow shop.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, and they had some really good guys down there. They had, you know, Justin Bliss, who was the GM at the time, Bob Jacobson, who owned the business, and you know, Bob's you know, he's a legend in the archery community here. I think he's shot pretty much every Vegas shoot ever, and so
From the beginning.
beginning, he was there. You know, he was good friends with Pete Shepley at the time. Pete used to be the owner of PSE Archery, and then there was a kid there. He was about my age. We're about the same age, but Drew Hortman. Drew is a phenomenal shooter. He still pursued a career in target archery. You know, he's made a good name for himself. He's made some shoot-offs at Lancaster. He actually made the shoot-off 2 years ago in Vegas. So Drew was a kind of a mentor for me back then because he grew up doing that. You know,
Yeah.
his grandpa and his dad all were in the sport of archery, and no one in my family ever did it. I was the kind of the pioneer, I guess you could say, for my family to be in the sport of archery. So I was pretty lucky to go down there and work with that group of guys. I learned a lot in a short amount of time working there. So yeah, you know, working there was kind of a bonus. I got to play with all the cool new stuff, and boy, the addiction to new archery equipment. Didn't make much money, but I had a lot of cool stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was a great experience there. Worked there for a little over a year. Decided to come back to Ogden to go to school, and I had actually, this is a funny story with Wilde Arrow. So Wilde Arrow just had started. It started, I think June of 03 is when Wilde Arrow had started. And so I remember coming back up. Back then, the shop was in Layton, Utah, right off of Gentile. And I walked into the shop, and Jeff, the main owner, and a couple other guys were there. I go, "Hey, I've got some archery experience. You need some help?" And they're like, "No, we're good. We don't need your help." I'm like, "All right, cool." And so I walk out, and I drove up to the Sportsman's Warehouse store up in Riverdale, and I walked in and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." And they're all, "Well, what do you know?" I'm like, "I know archery." And she's like, "Give me a minute." Next thing I know, about 5 minutes later, the gun manager comes rolling out to the front. He's like, "You know archery?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "When can you start?" So that's kind of how I got that job. Just kind of fell into it. You know, I worked there for several years. And that was a good environment for me to learn in, especially being a bigger box store. You know, obviously we didn't carry like a lot of the high end specialty archery gear, but you know, I got to learn how to run the gun counter, waterfowl. There was a lot of things in that hunting department that I was in charge of at a young age. You know, I had some good opportunities when I was younger to advance and do some stuff with Sportsman's. Jeff, the main owner of this shop, after I started to kind of build a name and a little bit of reputation, he kept trying to come get me to work for him.
Like, "Hey, remember me?
Yeah.
I came in and tried to get a job."
And so Jeff, you know, he kept calling me. He's like, "Hey, you know, I really want you to come run the shop." I'm like, "No." And at the time, Stu Utgard and Chris Utgard. Stu was the president and owner, and Chris was his son, who was VP. I got a pretty good relationship with those guys. So every time I'd call them and say, "Hey, I got a job offer somewhere else to make more money," Sportsman's would just give me more money. And so I was like, "I'll just stay here for a while."
Did they ever start to question like how many times you said that?
I mean, you know, if I was getting a pay raise quarterly, I wasn't complaining, you know, until they told me no, I guess. But no, those guys were great. They loved me, and you know, it was nice to kind of build that relationship with some of the higher ups in the company. But there came a point in time when I was at Sportsman's where a friend of mine, Cody Hassan, he's actually a big sales rep now in the industry, and Cody's a much smarter guy than I am. But you know, he kind of showed me. You know, I was still pretty young and wet behind the ears at the time, and he goes, "Dude, you might want to think about jumping ships here." And he kind of showed me the writing on the wall. And after I sat back and thought about it, I'm like, "I'm going to go meet with this Jeff guy and just see what he's about." And so I'd probably worked for Sportsman's for about 2 years or so, right around that area. And so Jeff, you know, came back and said, "Hey, you know, I want you to work for me. I want you to run my shop." And back then, boy, Jeff told you he would have sold you this place for a nickel. Like it's like any archery shop or almost any small business that starts. it's really hard to get going, especially in this industry. It takes a lot to let your customers know where you're at, build that reputation and everything. And so Jeff finally kind of convinced me to come over, and I took a pay cut from Sportsman's to come to Wilde Arrow at the time. And Jeff said, "Hey, look, I can't afford to pay you what you're getting paid there. We can't. But if you can grow the business," he goes, "I'll give you quarterly bonuses based off performance." And he threw kind of that carrot out there, something for me to chase.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, what the heck? Like, I'll try this for a while. If it don't work out, then whatever. I'm still young enough in life. I can go a different direction. I was starting to take some college courses at the time. And after about the first 6 months, Jeff set me down. He goes, "I can't afford you." and man, for whatever reason, when I came to Wilde Arrow, man, we just kind of just started building and growing. And so Jeff sat me down after about 6 months and goes, "Hey, you're doing great. I love what you're doing, but back then we needed cash flow. We needed money back into the business to help grow the inventory and those kind of things." And so Jeff said, "You know what? Like, if you can grow it to this point, we'll be partners. We'll be partners 50-50, moving forward." And I thought, you know what? I'm enjoying this. I'm liking it. And so I kind of took on that challenge. And it didn't take me too many years after that to get the shop to where me and Jeff were that 50-50 partner. And so, I think that was the fall of 2006. And so now here we are in 2024. Wow. And I'm still working at the bow shop.
So it's moved locations since originally where you were.
Yeah, so the shop started in June of 2003. We were up on Gentile in Layton, for people that are local that know where that's at. And then, the people we were releasing the building from at the time came to us and said, "Hey, a big investment group bought this. Like, we're going to level everything. You guys need to start looking for a new location." So, this is where our partnership, my partnership with Jeff has been so good. Like, he was the guy that had the money to fund it to grow it, but he's also really good at, negotiating contracts, finding places. We looked for several months up in the Layton area and just couldn't find anything that would suit our needs. And then when we came across this building we're currently in here in Centerville, it was perfect. It fit our needs. The rent was at that time was a really good deal. And so Jeff put a ton of work and a ton of money into the build out of this building. I don't think guys realize with, the time and work. Just to build this out alone was $50,000, a lot of money. And, but we opened this location April 1st of 2009 and have been here ever since. So, and where we got really lucky is, we are really close to I-15 exit right off Parish, which is nice. But then, the state of Utah came and built that new road, the Legacy Road. So we're off both exits now. So we didn't really plan this at the time. We just got really fortunate that because we're so accessible, both two main freeways, a lot of our customers from Ogden are still willing to come down and see us and travel here. But we didn't realize how much southern business we're going to pick up from, Salt Lake, even South Salt Lake, Twilla. So we got really lucky when we found this spot years ago that it just kind of, we didn't plan on it. It just kind of worked out that way. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a good location. If you don't necessarily know about it or you're not looking for archery shops, it can be a little, I know the first time I was introduced to it, I can't remember, it was my wife, there was some gift card that our middle child had, and I was like, Wilde Arrow? Like what? Like, okay, we can go in there and see. Like, I didn't know much about archery other than what, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, you go and you shoot those little bows. And then I came in here and I can't remember, it was, so it was Brent that we'd gone rifle hunting a couple years. And he was like, my brothers don't bow hunt anymore. I need a bow hunting partner. And I was like, man, like, it's kind of a big investment. I can't really afford that at the time. Yeah. And then I came in and I probably bugged Mark more than, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I guess Mark had just started a couple months prior to that.
Yeah.
So little did he know that he was going to get this ginger that was going to come in and ask all these questions, and then you as well. And but yeah, you guys are, just seeing, even when you're busy, like it's kind of a bummer because I can see that you guys want to get to all the customers and treat them all the same, but you just don't have enough hours in the day, for you to be able to dedicate an hour to every single person and walk them through. So when people tell me they're going to come up here, I'm like, I know these are kind of the slower times, so this is when I recommend you go up there. So now we're going to fill up those slow times and make them busy now too. But you guys do a really great job. You really do with bringing people in, making them feel cared about, wanted, and answering questions over the phone as well when people call in.
Yeah, the biggest thing for us is educating customers, especially new guys getting into the sport, right? And so, one thing that I will say for all the years that I've done this, I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of good quality guys work for me. And, I get guys that say all the time, like, oh, you should open a shop here. You should open a shop there. And I go, I could open another 100 Wilde Arrows, but it's the guys in the building. And to your point, like, we do get busy, but when we do get to you, we'll take as much time as it needs to where you leave feeling like every question you had was answered, all that stuff. So, but it's a process. We're not the type of shop that's just going to get you in the door, sell you something, and push you out. What we do and the service we provide here, it takes time, but we do it the right way. The reason I'm kind of so focused on that now with Wilde Arrow and the way I try to run the shop is my first experience of buying a bow. I was that guy that came in and bought a bow and got pushed out the door. And I think a lot of guys get into the sport thinking that it's cool and they see it, but their first experience is a bad one. The bow's not set up the right way. It's not tuned properly. There's all with archery, there's all these little factors that could stop you from growing. And so, I tell guys all the time, like, look, we're not going to have it done overnight, but when you do come in to get it, it's going to be done the right way. Our quality of work and the techs that we have, we take our time on stuff. So I think that's what kind of separates us from a lot of the other stores that are just come in and buy it and leave with it type of deal.
Yep.
Pardon the brief interruption, guys. Just wanted to give a shout out to some of the newest partners that we've got, and of course, some of the long-standing ones. Any way that you can pitch this, guys, I want you to understand that I have amazing partners that continue to provide gear, provide opportunities to be able to grow this channel. And as you go and support them, it definitely helps me. It also will help you because I'm providing a discount code with my partners to be able to get you the best gear at the best price available. So with that being said, we've got Leopold, amazing partner. They make some amazing glass. I'm super stoked to be able to have used the glass that I have so far and some of the new features that we will be experimenting with here in the field. Also, Grizzly Coolers. Grizzly Coolers are fantastic, guys. They're rugged. They're lightweight. They hold ice really well, hold a good temperature. So definitely go check them out. And, of course, First Phorm and First Phorm Outdoors. Guys, they've been around since the beginning of the podcast. I'm really, really excited to be able to be a partner with them, to be a bigger part of First Phorm Outdoors, sharing that with you. And I want you to join the community over on Facebook. The links for all of these things are down below. Of course, BlackOvis, got an amazing partnership with BlackOvis. Wilde Arrow is another partner of the show, guys. Any of the companies that you can think of that maybe you need some gear, maybe you need some, whatever it may be, as you're gearing up for tack season, Mountain Archery Fest, you're gearing up for hunting season here in the fall, maybe you're wrapping up a bear season or turkey season. All of those things, guys, go check out the discounts down below. It helps support the show, and you're going to get the stuff that you're looking for anyway at the best price possible. So thank you so much for tuning in. Last but not least, guys, if you're liking this, leave a like. Also follow if you're following along on the audio only versions, or if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment down below any questions you may have for Jeremiah in this episode or for me. I'd love to hear them. I always check out those comments and get back to you as soon as possible. With that being said, let's get back to the conversation here with Jeremiah Plyer and Wilde Arrow Archery.
No, for sure. So I know you said you have to be somewhere at 9:15, right?
Yeah, 9:15. My boy's got his last hockey game of the year. I got to be.
So you run a bow shop, you have kids, you've got a bunch of stuff going on. But I want to get into the sheep hunt. Okay, so this is kind of the culmination of all those misses. Getting your cow, slapping your arm. Now all of those things have culminated. 18, 20 years later to where you drew an amazing tag. How many points did you have?
Only 13.
So,
So-
okay. So only 13 points,
yeah.
but like still, that's, compared to what's the average draw for that tag?
So for rifle, a lot of guys are in that 26 to 30 point range. So 26 to 30 years to be able to draw that tag. So when I say only 13, I mean, I really hit the lottery on that.
Yeah.
So, the hunt that I had this last year, there was 2 archery tags. I ran into the other gentleman that had the tag. Great guy. He was 71 years old. He had waited 21 years to pull that tag. And he was still
Even
getting
then,
after
though,
it.
at 50, starting to put in for that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Would-
So, but that guy was still getting after it, man. Kudos to him. He was out there working hard, trying to find sheep, and he was a great guy. But I feel pretty fortunate to not have to wait till those later years of my life to draw the tag, and I think that's where the archery tag was kind of appealing. Kind of a funny story with that is, when I was sitting down at the back computer putting in, I put me, my wife, my boys, I'm in charge of putting this all in hunts, and I had selected to buy just a point last year for desert sheep, so I'm like, I'm so far out of the pool, it doesn't matter. And Mark at the same time walks by the computer and he looks at it, he goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Just put it in." I'm like, "You know what? You're not wrong, whatever." And so when I had scrolled over to look at hunts, I seen one that said archery only. I'm like, you know what? Great. I didn't even know really what I put in for it, to be honest with you. I just seen archery, selected my first choice. And so, I put in, not thinking much of it, with 13 points. And boy, when I opened that email that said successful, I was in my office and the boys heard me yelling from the back room. They all come running out, like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I just drew a sheep tag." And I felt bad. There was customers in the shop, and me and the boys, we were celebrating pretty good that day.
Yeah.
So, but it was pretty neat to finally see that successful. But I had been putting in for years for moose. So I think I have like 5 or 6 moose points. And kind of what made me switch back then is I took the top 5 moose units in the state. I looked at the tag numbers, not going up or down, like consistent tag numbers. But then I looked at the amount of guys that were in the pool above me. And I'm like, just based off of math, I'm going to be 150 years old by the time I draw a moose tag in this state. So, I thought about it. I'm like, man, the odds of me drawing a once in a lifetime tag here in Utah, because you got to put in, as a resident, you can only put in for one species every year. As a non-resident, you get to put in for all of them, right? Yeah. And so as I was looking back then, the least amount of guys were putting in for desert sheep hunts back then. Utah was trying to grow the herd and expand some more hunting opportunities. So the tag numbers were pretty low, but also the number of applicants total were pretty low. And so that's what honestly made me switch clear back then, is going, if I'm going to draw a once in a lifetime tag, like statistically, I feel like this might be my best odds to get it. So, I had invested, several years into moose, and once you stop putting in, you still have the points that they just sit there. They're not doing you any good, and switched over to do desert sheep after that. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, 13 years. I mean, there's a lot of people that can't even keep a job for 2 years. 13 years of putting in for points, and I'm glad Mark walked by your computer.
It was perfect timing, because I literally was seconds away from just hitting submit to buy a point.
It makes more sense why he was so dedicated to the glassing and the hunt and all that. He got the sheep bug pretty bad.
He does, for sure.
But no, that's awesome. So you went on the hunt, or you drew. You were talking about it. You were in, and I still. So talking with Gray, the Wild Sheep Foundation founder or owner, or whatever the title is that he holds, he almost had me convinced, like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when I recorded with him, to want to start hunting sheep.
Yeah.
Because he's like on a mission to get all the sheep tags and do all that stuff. They have a less than 1% club thing. I don't know if you've heard of any of those things. Oh man. Okay. So like the people that have never drawn or something, it's like less than 1% chance of drawing certain sheep tags, you can get put into this club. And anyway, the sheep that you were showing me on film, like they're big. They're not like your average sheep that you find in the field. Like they're big animals.
Yeah, it's really weird. So, when you go and glass one, they look a lot bigger on the hoof. But when you go stand next to one, it's not the same thing. So I kind of compare it to like maybe a 2-year-old mule deer buck with shorter legs, like body wise, like short, stubby little legs. So, but it is weird when you first go glass one and you're looking at them from quite a ways, and you're like, oh my gosh, that looks like a pretty good sized animal. But in perspective, they're actually quite a bit smaller than I was anticipating. So
yeah. So you drew the tag, you got all the equipment, you bought this nice glass. Like, oh, that was a big thing.
I called my business partner Jeff. I go, hey, just so you know, I'm buying a BTX Toro, and he's like, what are we buying that for? And I says, well, we got a sheep hunt. We got to go find a sheep, and kind of one of the biggest things that I had in this an advantage working in the industry for as long as I had. We started networking with people. Mark, honestly, give kudos to Mark. He did so much legwork for me. I think he was more excited I had the tag than I was.
Oh, he wouldn't stop talking about it.
And so just through networking different channels of people that we knew, he found our buddy Jared. He runs Hunt and Fool and Gear Fool. Great guy. He's a stud. Well, he had the tag the year prior to me. And so we were able to get in contact with him. And Jared's a busy guy, man. You send him a text message. If he responds in less than 2 weeks, you're on his priority list. Like, he is just that busy.
Yeah.
And so, we were able to get some info from him, which was a huge help. And then we met a gentleman by the name of Mike Fisher. He's a buyer for Sportsman's Warehouse in the fishing. Big sheep nut, though, man. This guy, he lives and breathes sheep. And so a friend of ours, Cody Powell, he's our sales rep for Gold Tip. He had texted me early in the year. He goes, hey, if you have that tag, you need to call this guy. Like, and me and Mark kind of got busy through the summer, and we're like, man, maybe who's this Mike guy? His name kept getting brought up in conversation. So we go down to Mike's office down at the corporate headquarters of Sportsman's, and boy, me and Mark sit at his desk, and he pops up his laptop, and me and Mark are on our phones, and we are dropping pins. And it was amazing the amount of knowledge that he had about those sheep down there, as far as, sit here, look this way, like, it was just incredible. And so we just got super fortunate that, there was still a lot of legwork to be done as far as scouting trips, and having a pin on your phone is one thing, but I won't lie, after the first scouting trip down there, I came back pretty humbled. And so, me and Mark had kind of planned for this hunt, and just for some of the people we work with in the industry, I'd mentioned, hey, I got the sheep tag, it's pretty cool. And Brian Call was in here one day getting his bow worked on. He's like, you got that tag? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I have no other hunts going on that time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Let's come film it. And I thought, whether I kill a sheep or not, having the video would be priceless memories for me for the rest of my life. And so I was like, bring it on, let's do it. And so that was pretty cool that Brian committed to come down and film the hunt. He ended up sending Brad as the cameraman, which that guy is a magician behind the camera. He's going to make me look a lot cooler than I think I am, I think. So but it was really some of the moments that he was able to capture, and some of the film that we've been able to, the little bit we've seen, just priceless memories to me. So, but it was a whirlwind on that. We had to get through, luckily my hunt started at the end of November. And so I was able to get through the busy season at the shop through July and August, which are just crazy, crazy months for us. And then my wife had a tag, so I did spend some time early season going out with her, which was fun. We always like enjoy hunting together. And then, right after the general season hunts in Utah got over, that's when I kind of planned my first scouting trip to go down, and me and Mark loaded up the side by side through the canvas cutters in the truck, and we hit the ground. So
yeah.
But that first trip was fun. It was we didn't see any sheep, but met a lot of cool guys, and we actually ran into a lot of other hunters out in the field, because the rifle hunters, they get to start in the middle of September and hunt clear till the 9th of November. So they get a pretty long rifle season. And so as we're down there scouting for sheep, trying to find them, these other guys are hunting them. And
they've been putting in for decades at this point.
If you draw a desert sheep tag with under 20 points, you're living right for sure. A lot of these guys are, 20 plus years to even get towards that upper echelon as the point keeps happening. So, a lot of these guys we're talking to, I felt bad telling them, like, how many points did you have? They're like, 23. And they're like, how many are you? I'm like, 13. So you kind of get that funny look, like, man, I've been putting in for a lot longer than you to get the same tag. But when I look back at like the draw odds and the statistics, there was only about 180 guys that put in for my hunt. And I think guys think about it's a once in a lifetime. So once you draw the tag, whether you kill or not, you can't go on another hunt. Number two, the type of terrain that you're in, it's intimidating stuff down there. It's pretty, if you get in the wrong spot, it can be kind of treacherous. And I think a lot of guys looked at archery desert sheep. They're like, nah, I'm going to pass on that, And so it's pretty neat that the state of Utah has started to allow more once in a lifetime hunts that are archery only. And so far the hunt that I had, the success rate's been pretty good. I think we're sitting around, they've only had it for 3 years. 3 rams have gotten killed. So we're at 50%, which for a bow hunt is actually really incredible. But I had some other friends that had drawn a desert sheep tag on a different unit. And a lot of those guys were having a hard time filling tags. The success rate on that hunt was incredibly low compared to the tag that I had. So, but I think a lot of guys, if they, I've been packing a bow for a long time now, and I've had a lot of experience, and just those little subtle things you learn as a bow hunter. I felt pretty confident that I always tell, if you can get me an animal 80 yards and under, he's probably going home in the bed of the truck. That's kind of the confidence that I have now with many years I've been doing this.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I guess just kind of walk us through. So you got down there, you glassed. The first day I think Mark texted me and was like, we've got sheep in the glass. It was like opening morning. And it was like, all right, this is already happening. And this is after going down multiple times and barely being able to find them. And so it was kind of looking a little grim. Luckily, we didn't have that. Luckily for you, obviously we want more snow, but we didn't have a lot of snow because there was some bad parts too. That you could have gotten stuck pretty bad if there'd been good snow. So it kind of all played together for you. You got some sheep in the glass the first day, and I guess walk us through the day that I don't want to spoil it, but the day that you got your ram. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So when we first got down there, we got camp set, scouted for a couple of days, and we've seen a couple of sheep here and there, but they were pretty far scouted out, and they were in some pretty rough country that I was looking into that country going, I'm fine to go into there, but it's going to be almost a 2-day commitment to get just in close to the sheep, because if you blow him out and he decides to run across the canyon, you're spending a whole day of hunting, if not 2 days of hunting, just to get back out of the canyon, And so kind of through our scouting trips and kind of what I'd kind of put in my head is, there was 3 different spots of the unit that I'm like, there's been a lot of sheep killed in here. It's pretty accessible, and the terrain was very conducive for bow hunting. And so I kind of made my mind up. I'm like, we're going to focus on these 3 areas for the first however long of the hunt. If it takes us 5, 6, 7 days, and less, we're going to spend those days there in those areas. And if after 6, 7 days, if we haven't found a sheep, we're going to go to plan B. And so luckily opening morning, I decided to go out to one of my glassing knobs. Mark had to go to a different one, and it's a pretty good distance away because you're glassing 2 different canyons. And I get set up, I get behind the glass, and I'm looking probably 2 miles. And the sun's starting to come up. You're seeing a little bit of heat waves, and I see these white butts moving, but they're kind of up in the sagebrush flat. And I'm going, are those mule deer or sheep? I couldn't tell from that far away. And finally started getting a little bit lighter, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, they're sheep. And man, I got so excited. I'm hitting Mark on the in reach, like, hey, sheep found, get over here. And I got nothing. So I was sitting and waiting. I text him again, nothing. And so finally I'm on the in reach, and 9 warriors here at the shop. And we'd all kind of shared numbers through the in reach. And I text Nymore off the in reach and says, hey, is this working? Did this come through? He goes, yeah, it came through just fine. Why? I says, send Mark a message right now and tell him that I got a sheep found and get his butt over here. And from the time I first spotted those sheep to when Mark showed up was about an hour. And in that group, there was a big ram, about 6 ewes, and then a smaller ram had kind of broke off the group. But in that canyon total, there was another smaller ram and another ewe that were on a separate section. So we kind of knew we had the sheep in there. There was a 5.5-year-old ram. I talked to my buddy Mike. He's like, yeah, I've seen that ram. He's 5.5. Like, he knows everything about him, right? And so
Probably had a name for him.
he probably does. He knows every sheep on that unit, I swear. And so as the hunt went on, I actually put some stalks on that smaller ram. Came close several times to getting an arrow in him. And I think we were into day 5 of the hunt. Luckily at that time, my wife had shown up, my buddy Tito, then it was Mark, me, and Brad. So we had 5 of us, and we were able to kind of really surround this canyon to get glass into it, because those sheep can can drop into a little slot canyon. You could glass it 100 times. The next thing you know, a sheep pops up out of nowhere. And so the day that everything came together, we kind of still had an idea they were in the canyon. Me and Brad had went to the east too far, about 2 miles. We didn't know where they were at. So it was me and Brad Park. We're hiking down to the canyon rim. Mark's on the other side. And he hits me on the radio, goes, hey, we found it. And I'm all, perfect. Where are they at? And he goes, your best bet's to hike back to the side-by-side, drive about 2 miles to the west, and then hike back in. I'm like, okay. So we hike back up, get in the side-by-side, drive over. And as we're working in, I got an earbud in, and Mark, my buddy Tito, and Bliss are on the other side of the canyon. They can see the sheep. They can see us working down. And that's kind of a funny part of the story. So we get down there, and Mark tells me, he goes, hey, from my perspective, you're about 200 to 300 yards away. Drop your pack, drop your boots, and creep out. I'm like, perfect. So I get back on the radio. I tell Mark, I'm like, hey, if we're that close, I'm not going to talk. I'll just stay silent, just stay in my ear and kind of guide me in. So me and Brad start creeping out. We drop out to the sledge, and I'm like, I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm kind of looking back to the east is where Mark had told me they were last were at. Well, I'm not hearing anything in my earbud, so I'm thinking I've still got to be quite a ways away if Mark's not talking to me, right? But I'm like, I still don't know where the sheep are at. So I start creeping out towards the edge, and I go, you know what? Like, I don't want to skyline myself. So I decide to do the nice little crawl out to the edge, and as I'm getting out to the edge, I'm still looking to my right, thinking they're still 200 to 300 yards away. And so I'm kind of poking, I'm looking this way, and all of a sudden I look down, and there's a ewe bedded about 70 yards below me. And I guess the whole time after I talked to Mark last, something happened with my radio. It cut out, it wouldn't work. And so Mark's on the other side of the canyon. There's having a screaming. He's yelling. I wish they would have got it on video. He's throwing his hat, and boy, he is getting pissed, And so I see that ewe. She stands up and gets nervous, and there's one bush, and it's not, I don't even call it a bush. There's a couple sticks. But I have a pretty good shooting lane from my perspective, right to that ewe. And a lot of times when sheep get nervous, they all want to kind of group up. So I kind of tuck back in a little bit, get up on my knees. I range find her through the bush, set my sight. Well, as she starts to kind of get up and get nervous and turn, I draw my bow, thinking that if she gets nervous and runs, if that ram runs over next to her, I'm already range found, I'm already at full draw. All I gotta do is settle a pin and send it. Well, she doesn't sit there too long. She kind of takes off towards the east. So I let down. Me and Brad tucked back into the hill. Now I have an idea where the sheep are at. And then we're still using a bench, like a cliff edge. So we're here, and there's about a 10 to 15 foot drop that you could get through. It wasn't terrible steep. And then the sheep are on the next bench down. And so kind of funny story of this, Mark thinks I'm going to mess the stock up, right? And so he luckily has the BTX and the Ollin system, and he goes, you know what? He says this to my wife. He goes, I'm going to film this to show them what they did wrong on the stock. Yeah, because the radio's not working.
Oh no.
So Mark starts filming. Well, it was pretty neat because Mark got a completely different perspective of the stock. But you can see me come over, and I'm poking my head over the edge of this rock, and I see the sheep, and they'd moved a little bit too far to the east out of range. So I tuck in, I squat down, and me and Brad go taking off, and I cover, what I thought was a decent amount of distance at the time. And I pop over, and at this point, I don't know if I had tunnel vision or what, but I only seen a ewe standing there. So I pop over, and I range find her, and I tuck back, and I set my sight, and And I knew at that moment, I'm like, they've got to all be right there. I don't know where the rams are at, but at least I have a good range. So usually they've been grouping up the whole time. And so I set my sight, and at that point, I had to take 2 big, deep breaths on. Brad's like, dude, I'm glad you took those breaths. I'm like, me too. But I was feeling the weight of the moment, that pressure. I hadn't felt that much buck fever, anxiety, it's clear back to my early days.
13 years of putting in.
Yeah.
And you're the odd man out. 3 years of this hunt.
Yeah.
Lifetime hunt. So even if you don't kill anything, you can't draw again.
Can't do it again.
There's no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Everyone over there glassing, Mark yelling across the can.
Yeah. It was funny, like, as far as like that goes, like I was having so much fun on the hunt. Like, having Brad filming it, no pressure there, I didn't feel one bit. It was just the pressure of the moment, like, and I won't lie, like that's one of the things that I love about hunting, is that adrenaline, that buck fever feeling it's hard to describe unless you've been in the moment. And so I lean down, I take 2 breaths, and I'm like, I should have took a third, but I took 2, and I draw my bow, get to full draw, and I'm using the edge of this cliff band. Like, so when I'm popping up, I'm barely creeping up enough to be able to see the sheep, really.
Right.
And I think what had kind of saved me is on the angle of the stock, the wind was perfect right in my face, but the sun was setting behind me. And I think as the sheep were looking towards back where I was at, they're now looking into the sun a little bit. Well, as I pop over, I can see, 2 kind of groups of sheep, because, excuse me, all the sheep at that point had kind of grouped together, like I knew they would. And I was thinking, I'm going to get to full draw and pop over, and the big ram is going to be standing behind ewes. I'm going to have no shot. Well, as I'm at full draw, I pop over, and at that moment, there was some sheep to the left, sheep to the right, and the big ram was kind of standing in the middle, and he turned to the right, and he's quartering away. And I'm like, holy cow, I actually have a clean shot at this thing. And, I've told guys here in the shop that I'll admit it, I made a poor shot. It's bow hunting, it is what it is, but sheep's vitals are tucked more far forward than a lot of people realize. A lot of the research I've done is like, hey, aim closer to the shoulder than you think. So on that same shot scenario, if it would have been like a deer or an elk, I would have been back towards that back rib a little bit more, but I'm thinking sheep forward. So my pin's towards the front of his vitals, and I won't lie, it wasn't the steadiest I've ever been on an animal. But as I'm watching my pin float, the pin is floating on the ram. Like I can see it. I'm like, anywhere this shot breaks, it's going to be a kill shot. Might not be perfect, but it's there. Well, I'm shooting a hinge release, so I'm at full draw. The pin's floating. I rotate to the click. And, at the last moment as I'm trying to get that shot to break under pressure, I think I grab my release. I torque it a little bit. So the arrow, shot breaks, the arrow goes, and that it just happens. Everything is a blink and eye. It happens so fast. And we hear my arrow go past the ram and hit shell rock, and it was loud. You can hear it in the film. And I'm thinking I've missed. And so the sheep run off, and I turn to Brad. I go, hey, I think I pulled it to the right. I think I shot in front of him, man. Like I made a terrible shot. And so me and Brad are kind of talking back and forth, getting some camera footage and stuff. And I wasn't really that mad at myself for missing. I was like, what? I got an opportunity. Like that was like, how many guys can say they shot at a desert ram, right? Let alone have a tag. And so I really wasn't that mad at myself. I was like, that's bow hunting, lesson learned. And so as I'm fiddling,
you didn't have to be mad at yourself. Mark was plenty mad for you.
Oh man, if I would have missed that ram, Mark would have never let me live it down. We probably wouldn't be friends with this day. He would have disowned me. And so as I'm fiddling with the radio, trying to, get, because I can't, and finally the radio starts working, and I go, hey, like, I think I missed him, like, where'd they go? And he's like, oh no, you hit him. I'm like, I turned to Brad, I'm like, oh, I hit him. And I didn't even know I'd hit him because the shot looked at that quartering angle.
Yeah.
I seen it, what looked like it went in front of his chest. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, he's bleeding. And so Mark's like, hey, we can see him now, but he's going to work behind the peninsula where they're going to lose angle. So he's like, you and Brad need to go. We're on this big cliff band. He goes, go as far as west you can, get the edge of the cliff band. You'll be able to see the valley. So Brad and I go over there, and as soon as we pop over, we can actually see him below us. And he's still up and moving. You can tell he's hurting. And boy, me and Brad lay down on that cliff band. And at that point, when the ram had moved up, Mark and the other crew, they couldn't see him at that point. They lost visual. And I'll tell you, man, that you want to talk about emotional roller coaster. I didn't know if I was going to puke. My stomach was in knots. So many things were going through my head in that moment. And me and Brad laid on that cliff edge for an hour and a half watching that ram. And, I don't know how much Brad and those guys are going to show in the film, but, he was bleeding good. I could see that I hit him forward on the neck. But he would get up, his back legs would shake, and he fell down a couple times. And then, this went on for a while. And then there was one point in time, the ram kind of got up, did a 360, laid down, and he tipped over and he put all of his legs out to the side. He kind of relaxed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's done. He's dead. And I sat there and I was glued through the binos. I wasn't moving. Mm-hmm. And I'm not kidding you, about 5 minutes later, the ram pops his head up. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
No.
I was like, what have I done? And I'm thinking, man, we're going to have a rodeo tomorrow. I've got a wounded ram that's bleeding. Like, this hunt's it's going to get crazy tomorrow. That's what I kept thinking, because we're losing light pretty quickly. And so, these guys kept hitting me on the radio, and I just didn't want to talk. I was so sick. And I put the binos down. I get on the radio, go, hey, I've still got eyes on him. I'm hitting my button, and I still got eyes on him. He's looking pretty hurt. There's a ton of blood, but he's not dead yet. And as I pulled the binos down, I'm still looking. He's about 450 yards. Well, I see him get up and tip over. And so I'm on the radio with Mark. I'm like, he just fell over. I got to go. And so I get behind the binos again, and boy, he did a couple more rolls, and then he just stopped moving. And me and Brad watched him till just the last little bit of twilight. I mean, we're really struggling to see him. He hadn't moved for a good amount of time. And Brad looks at me. He goes, I think we got him. I'm like, I think we do too. In that moment, like, still not guaranteed. I don't have my hands on him yet, but I'm like, I think we got a dead ram in the bottom of the canyon. Yeah. And so that was kind of the hunt. And, the other group came. They had to drive around that big canyon. They came to us, and our game plan was to drop in and go get them. I was worried about, coyotes with all the blood and stuff. It's a once in a lifetime animal. I don't want a coyote eating it overnight. Right. Well, we tried working into the canyon from that rim for quite a while. We just kept getting cliffed out. We couldn't get off that edge. So we made the game plan. We went back to camp. Me, Brad, and then my wife, she's a go-getter, I'll tell you. She's like, I'm going with you. I'm like, but it's cold, and you can come in the morning. And she's like, she just looks at me with a dead stare. She's like, I am coming with you. I'm like, okay, load your pack. So boy, she's a trooper. She loaded all of her, sleeping bags and backpacking gear. And I think me, Brad, and Phil, so we left camp around 8 p.m., drove around about a half-hour drive, and started working in the canyon. Now we're navigating in the dark. It's cold. It's probably, upper, teens, lower 20s. So it's a pretty cold night, December in the desert. And from the time we left camp to finally make it to the ram took us about 4 hours. It's really dark. And we found a marsh. The water was so deep, I felt bad for Felissa. The water had actually come up over her boots. So it's cold.
The worst. That's the worst feeling.
In 20 degrees, and she's such a trooper. But, we navigated. And one thing I learned from this hunt that, for guys that are, thinking about going on it, the contour lines from, we were using Gaia and Onyx. They're not very accurate, I'll tell you, because we're trying to, it's dark, so you can only see as far as your headlamp can take you, and we're trying to use contour lines based off the maps, and boy, we'd get to a spot that we think we can cross, and we're looking like there's no way, so we back out and go around. And so after we worked into them, found the ram, we did some cool photos in the dark with us three. That was pretty neat. And then we set up a teepee with Brad had, luckily that guy's a beast, and he packed a teepee with a titanium stove for it. Yep. Boy, we got that thing fired up and got Felissa all thawed out, and just had an amazing night out in the desert. And then we get up the next morning, and luckily, we were camping next to him, and we heard a crow. And all of a sudden, Brad, he pops up, he looks at me, I look at him, and he unzips the tent, he looks, he's like, we're good. He zips it back and goes back to sleep. So he kept watch for me all night to make sure nothing got to the ram. And so the next morning, we want to do a bunch of group photos and stuff. And Mark and Tito were coming the next morning. And they're like, we'll bring you hot coffee. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to say no to that. Well, as they were working in, it only took them about 45 minutes of a hike to get from where they parked to us, because I was able to sit and they just picked the right canyon. I'm like, 4 hours of what I went through last night in the dark, and you took you 45 minutes. But it was a great experience, great memory. To have the trophy photos with me, my wife, Brad, Tito, Mark. It was memories will last a lifetime for sure.
Yeah, and of course the picture I get from Mark is the nuts.
Yeah, I keep talking Brian into putting that as the thumbnail, but I don't think he's going to go for it. So, but yeah, I think everyone's first message they got from us was that, it's like, it's very impressive part of the sheep.
Yeah, you're like, it is proportionate. It is proportionate. Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, but that's such a cool story. A lot of people don't, like what you were saying, they don't get that tag, even get that experience in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And you got that tag. And I definitely believe in karma, or whatever you want to call it, but all this work that you've put in, and all the help that you've given people, including myself and many other archers, getting them on their way, or people that maybe just fell out of archery and are getting back into it, whatever it may be. You definitely have earned that.
Yeah,
and so that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's such a cool experience. And then the ram, the video will show it. It's an awesome ram. And to think that they butt heads with these big old horns, and then that one has a hole through it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so when we got to look at him a little bit better in the daylight, he actually has a bullet hole through his left horn, and he had a big scab and scar on his neck that somewhere during the rifle season, someone took a shot at him and just had some. I'm waiting to meet that guy.
Yeah.
The guy that's like, I shot at that ram, and so,
he'll make it in here, I bet.
Yeah,
after he sees the video.
Hopefully, it'll be really neat to hear about, like, where he shot at him and the scenario, and how far did that ram move from there to where I killed him. So hopefully someone that watches the video or listens to your podcast will be like, I know that guy, and so.
And did you ever get him officially measured?
No, so
unofficially though.
So unofficially, we think he's going to go number 2 in the state for archery. If not 2, definitely number 3. It's going to come down to a couple 8s, really. Which, score is cool. I'm super grateful I shot such a big ram. I would have been just as happy to shoot the 5.5 ram that I was chasing. It just happened to be that when I finally got my shot opportunity, it was a big one standing there, right? But I haven't had him officially scored yet. But we'll get that done, and it might, if it is, we might put a nice little plaque underneath of him. So the wife gave me the okay to do a full body mount, which it'll be pretty neat to have. And I look at it, at my age, like, I'm still pretty young. That's going to be a lot of years of looking at that mount and reliving those memories and those experiences. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the only reason, like, I don't really know anything about score, but I ask because it gives you kind of a reference point, right? Sure. For people out there wondering. I mean, it's number 2 in the state, number 2, 3 in the state for archery. Like, that's a big ram,
right?
It wasn't just, which any ram, like you said, would have been a good ram
for sure.
But it was a big one to go along with it. So.
Yeah. So I'm not official. Mark's better at this than I am, but we rough scored him at like 156, somewhere in that range. Which for that particular unit also is a big ram. That's a lot of the other things that, as I've learned and got more into sheep like Mark has, is, when you start hearing these guys shooting these rams that are 170, 180 plus, it's really hard for the state of Utah to grow that size of ram. A lot of those bigger rams like that are coming down to Nevada and Arizona. But in this unit, they were, everyone I talked to all summer long, it's like, if you see a 160 ram in this unit, there's maybe 4 rams the whole unit will go 160.
Wow.
And so, a lot of the guys, even on the rifle hunt, they were still shooting beautiful, rams and all that. I mean, they were killing between 140, 150. That's the average size that gets killed there, even on the rifle season. And so the fact they're able to get it done with a bow and shoot one of the older, more mature, better caliber rams with the bow. Just super lucky, man. So I chalk it up to. So.
No, that's awesome. Well, I know you've got to go be dad. Take care of the kids. Go support the kids. But is there anything else you want to leave with the audience?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on the podcast and love what you're doing, man. So we need to do this more often.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys watch this podcast, haven't seen the film, Gritty Bowman. I don't even think it goes by Gritty Bowman anymore. Just
No,
Gritty.
just Gritty.
Just
Yeah,
Gritty.
Gritty call.
I know. Yeah. I've known him for so long. I still call him the
Yeah.
Gritty Bowman. But he's going to have a cool YouTube film out about it. Pretty excited for that to come out. It's going to be so neat because, sitting here having the conversation, kind of walking you through the hunt, telling you about it. Once you be able to go back and watch the film and everything I talked about, put it into perspective, it's going to be really neat to show customers or, even hopefully one day my grandkids that, hey, this is Grandpa back in the day,
Well, with Megaplex being right there, we should rent out a theater and do that.
I think that's what Brian's game plan is he wants to do some more movie content in the theaters because it's so successful during Western Hunting Expo. Guys love it. I think as part of the archery community and local community here, we're going to put something together. And Brian was talking. He's like, hey, if it's successful here in the state of Utah, he's talking about doing some different states and different venues with it, and which I think will be really cool. I think a lot of guys aren't really connected with sheep. Sheep's not something that a lot of guys get,
especially not with a bow.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the appeal and draw to a lot of guys that are bow hunters going, a lot of guys are just not fans of sheep because, something like deer and elk is something you get to hunt every year. You kind of, you get used to a sheep hunt's just kind of this oddball out here. You're like, what is a desert sheep? Most guys aren't even into that world. And so I really think between being such an epic hunt, cool adventure, and then also being a bow hunt, a lot of guys are drawn to that. I really hope guys will watch that and feel motivated to go out and try to do it with a bow more often. But the other side of that I'm really hoping comes from this is, it might suck for guys that are watching this that are going to put in for that tag. The next couple of years to draw that tag might get harder. Guys might come watch the film and go, that was awesome. I want to go do that. And you might see the draw results get worse. More guys put in for it. What I'm hoping happens is in the long term is the state of Utah looks at this and goes, hey, guys want to do this. It can be a successful management tool. And so maybe they're going to step back and look at more once in a lifetime species and go, let's give out some more bow hunts out there. And so I'm hoping that short term might feel some pain, but long term, if we get more opportunity for bow hunters and for the sport, that might be a good thing, long term there.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, awesome. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll definitely have to do more of these because I can't say enough, for everyone out there listening, if you're getting into archery, even if you're not really local, if you're coming in for Total Archery Challenge, whatever it may be, I recommend you come and check out Wilde Arrow. I honestly I probably wouldn't be into archery if it wasn't for these guys. And I say mainly Jeremiah and Mark because they were the two that really walked me through getting me started and have dealt with all my questions, good and bad questions. But, at this point, they're stuck with me. So at that point, I do recommend that you guys come and check out the shop. Great guys, and they're very knowledgeable, and they'll make sure that you're taken care of. So that being said, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks, Kim, for coming on. And, of course, get out, live your life, and love it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this podcast, guys. I really, really appreciate your support. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with Jeremiah and Wilde Arrow Archery. Jeremiah had an amazing sheep hunt. He's done so many things for me, him and the crew over at Wilde Arrow, like Mark. They just have helped me so much in the archery side of things. I don't even know if I would be really into archery as deep as I am, if at all, if it wasn't for Wilde Arrow. So really appreciate these guys. Definitely go check them out. If you're in the area, definitely go over. You're not going to have to buy a bow if you walk into the shop. You probably want to, but go and check them out. Go shoot some bows. Go talk with the guys. Get to know them and spread the news about Wilde Arrow, guys. They're just an amazing bow shop. With that being said, thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel, don't forget to subscribe, or if you're listening to the audio-only version, follow and leave a review. Those are free ways that you can help support the show. Also, the 3 giveaways / sweepstakes. We've got the first Phorm Outdoors Hunt of a Lifetime, over $9,000 package going through the first week of June. Go check that out. Link will be down below, along with the over $500 worth of BlackOvis gear and the Garmin giveaway. Excuse me, guys. So, with that being said, go check them out. Also, a huge shout out to all the sponsors that continue to help support this channel so I can bring you reviews, gear items, ideas, etc. We've got Montana Knife Company is a recent sponsor of the show. Really appreciate them as well. The guys over there doing amazing work, always coming out with new, innovative ideas to help you with your knife needs, especially that culinary set, guys. My goodness, that thing is fantastic. Also, Leupold Optics. We've got Phorm Outdoors. Any of these things, guys, that you are in need of, go check out the discount codes down below. It helps support us here at the show. It helps support those companies that I believe in, I trust in, and they also, in return, trust in me. So, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.